Oh, welcome back to BS Rugby and some huge news overnight. Of course, I'm sure you've already heard of it. And this is the reason why you're clicking on the video. Of course, the news about South Africa potentially joining the Six Nations in 2025, replacing the Italians. This news was released on the Mail Online by Chris Foy. We're going to have a look at the situation. We're going to take a deep dive, look at who's behind it, who could be the potential investors, what this means for each of the nations involved, and what truly could happen. So before we get into it, I'd massively appreciate it if you can like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's free to do, helps you keep up to date with everything at the minute. Of course, you've got loads of Six Nations content. Leave a like on the video, and of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Be eager to hear your thoughts on this situation. So as I said, the story was released by the Mail Online by Chris Foy last night. The headline saying South Africa to join the Six Nations in 2025, replacing Italy. Investor CVC are the driving force behind the move. They pumped 365 million into the Six Nations. So we'll talk about CVC a lot later on, and we'll go into depth on them. But where are we at the minute? Well, the Six Nations, of course, hence why it's called the Six Nations, has 6 teams involved. Of course, it's got Wales, England, Scotland, Ireland, France, and Italy. Each of those countries has an ownership in the Six Nations, so each of them own part of the Six Nations, and they sign a deal to do that. Of course, Italy joined the Six Nations to create the Six Nations back in 2000. They've been involved since then. If we're looking at the Southern Hemisphere, taking South Africa into context, of course, South Africa, New Zealand, Argentina, and Australia have been playing in the Rugby Championship for the last few years, with Argentina joining over the last few years. And each of them signed a new 3-year deal recently to keep them in that competition until 2025. So they're going to be there until at least 2025. If we're looking a little bit more towards the Northern Hemisphere to an extent, we have the URC. The URC, of course, the United Rugby Championship, is the league for teams in Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Italy. And at the start of this season, we had 4 South African teams joining in the South Sea Sharks, the Stormers, the Emirates Lions, and the Bulls. The interesting thing about them, when they came in, they weren't able to qualify for Europe straight away. But if they do manage to finish well in this domestic season, they will then be able to qualify either for the Challenge Cup or the Champions Cup. So South African teams will be able to play in the European competitions from next season. Of course, at the start of the video, I said that CVC were very much involved, and we're going to talk about them. Well, we certainly are going to do that now. We're going to get into them. So who are CVC? CVC have been around for a very long time and have been investing in sport for over 20 years. They're a private equity company. They have offices all over the world, mainly in America and in Asia. Now, the first real thing I could find about them where they'd invested in rugby particularly was back in 2018, December 2018, where they invested in Premier Rugby Limited. Of course, they are the commercial manager of Premiership Rugby, the domestic league in England. So they pumped money into the competition back in 2018. If we're looking now in March 2021, CVC announced that they had agreed a long-term strategic partnership with the Six Nations. So what does that mean? What will CVC do? That means that they're going to invest up to 365 million for 1/7 share in the Six Nations. Now, what you got to think about is March 2021. This was COVID. This was bang in the middle of COVID. And it was said that the RFU, of course, England's rugby directors and all that, they got 90 million from CVC, which would certainly have helped them through COVID. So what this means is that CVC now for 1/7 share in the Six Nations. Of course, the other 6 unions, of course, keeping their stake. So they're just added in CVC. This not only covers the Six Nations itself, it covers the under-20 Six Nations and also the women's Six Nations as well. We've seen a huge sponsorship in TikTok coming on board this season, which is a massive platform and a massive opportunity for the Six Nations. But it doesn't just also cover the Six Nations, it also covers the Autumn Internationals, hence why we saw the changes in the Autumn Nation Series in the autumn, where we saw different teams playing against each other. And on the whole, I actually really enjoyed the Autumn Nation Series. I thought it worked well. I thought they put teams together that should be playing one another. In fact, CVC will be paying this investment over the next 5 years to each of the unions and to the Six Nations. So it's going to be a long-term project, obviously, for them. It's not just give them the money and leave. It's very much, we're going to give you this money over 5 years. They're here for the long haul. So that is where we're at the minute in terms of the money, in terms of what CVC have done so far. And that is where we're at with South Africa, where they are at with the Rugby Championship. But what does this truly mean? I mean, if South Africa do join, it's a huge market. You cannot deny that. South Africa love their rugby. They absolutely love it. They've, of course, won the World Cup 3 times now, I want to say it is. They won it 3 times. Most recently, of course, in the last one, led by Sia Khaleesi. And they are probably one of the best teams in the world, having, of course, won the Lions series last year. But then you have to look at Italy. Italy, of course, has been involved since 2022. There's always been this conversation about how good Italy can be and whether they are good enough for the Six Nations. And although there have been slight improvements over the last couple of years, and with Kieran Crowley in charge now, I think they're going in the right direction. Still, to have gained the wooden spoon on 18 of 21 occasions, it's still a massive issue for them. There are signs that they are improving, but is it enough? Again, the Italian market for rugby, it probably isn't that great as South Africa, that's for sure, and that's probably something that they are certainly looking at. The only other debate then that this really does raise is promotion and relegation. There was no talk of adding to the Six Nations in this article. It was all about replacing Italy and bringing in South Africa. There's no talk of South Africa joining and maybe Georgia joining. It was just about South Africa. For me, the Six Nations is a European competition, and I think it should stay like that. I understand that South Africa makes sense to an extent with the time zone, the market that is there, the growth that could be there, but it's completely different. You know, it's summer over there right now. Here in the UK, it's absolutely pouring down. It's winter, it's cold, it's wet, it's miserable. We're beginning to see a little bit of sun. I haven't seen the sun for about 6 months here in Wales, but there's so many things that this move does not make sense. Financially, for the Six Nations, it makes perfect sense. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of investment that CVC are putting into it, and it seems like they are a driving force behind it. It knocks that question, though, as I said, of promotion and relegation, doesn't it? For me, the Six Nations should be the pinnacle of European rugby. It should be the goal for any country in Europe to get to. Of course, you got the Rugby Europe Championships, of course, which is the second division. You've got the likes of Georgia in there, Romania, Spain and Portugal are emerging as really exciting teams to watch. And I would be in favour of seeing promotion and relegation with an option that either Georgia plays a playoff against whoever finishes bottom of the Six Nations, or it might be a Romania, in a few years it might be a Portugal. Again, that comes down to money. Would the unions sign up for that? And the reason that these unions may potentially sign up for this South Africa team to join in, there's no risk of them leaving the Six Nations. And with South Africa coming in, the market that they could draw in, the new people, the amount of money they could draw in, it makes a lot of sense for these unions to do this. And especially after COVID, it makes so much sense after all the money they've lost. And I think CVC have understood that right. We have this money. We can give these monies to these unions who have been struggling, and then we can guarantee even more money if they just allow one more country to come in. It's a tough one, isn't it? Personally, I don't want to see this happen. I'd rather see a pathway for these European countries to get involved in the competition. I love South Africa. I think they're a fantastic side. I love the country. The people are great. I've chatted with many rugby fans from South Africa over the years. But I just don't think this is right. It just doesn't sit right with me. And having looked on social media over the last 24 hours, I think most people echo my opinion on it, especially Europeans echo my opinion on it, that this really shouldn't be happening. Whether the Six Nations will listen, whether they will listen to what fans have to say, I'm not too sure. That will be another question for sure. But I would be really interested to hear your thoughts. So let me know in the comments down below. Would you like to see this happen? If not, what would you like to see happen with the Six Nations? I am working on a video around promotion and relegation in the Six Nations. Got fans on from Georgia, from Italy, and all around Europe to get their thoughts on that. That's going to come out next week at some point. Or would you just like to say, right, let's just keep the Six Nations as it is. It's worked for 22 years. Let's just keep it as it is. Let me know in the comments down below. Of course, hit that like button as well and subscribe. Come join the channel. It's completely free to do. And we've got so much content going on at the minute with the Six Nations. We're growing a great rugby community here on the channel. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that's explained the situation a little bit. We'll have to see how this develops over the next few days, months, and years. But as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Take it easy, folks. And peace.